So this next case study explains how to best provide niche product and, as an SME supplier, how to capitalise on a small-scale product offer. Now, Adele Youngs is from Live Travel and Tours. Adele, can you please introduce yourself and explain about your business?
Okay, yes. Well, my name is Adele Youngs. I'm director and co-owner of Live Travel and Tours. And when I was growing up, my two main interests were music and languages and travelling. So I went to university, studied languages, and while I was there, I worked as a tour director for American high school groups across Europe, partly as a way to earn money while travelling. And I didn't really realise the impact that that was going to have on me. And I vividly remember, bearing in mind I was only about 3 or 4 years older than the students I was escorting around at the time, but I vividly remember one particular group where there were a couple of slightly difficult students, one boy in particular who sat at the back of the bus and wouldn't engage. And at one point in the tour, we were in Paris and we had a free afternoon, and I took some of them, including this particular boy, up the Eiffel Tower. And when we got to the top, he stood there and he had this look on his face. And he said, I washed cars for 2 years to earn money to come on this trip. And seeing this view and being here at this moment is worth every single one of those cars that I had to wash. And at that moment, I thought, actually, you know what? This is what I want to do. I want to help young people go away from home, see a different part of the world, learn about different cultures, and help them experience things that they never would have a chance to do at home. And so I finished my degree. I worked for 12 years in London with a very well-known inbound tour operator, and became director responsible for their group travel. And then in 2008, I and a colleague left and we set up our own company, Live Travel and Tours, to focus particularly on a certain niche that we both felt very passionately about, which was linked to my interest in music, which was particularly educational and cultural travel, focusing on performing tours of high school choirs, college orchestras, marching bands, that type of thing. And so Live Travel and Tours is now in its 10th year. We're a receptive operator or ground handler, depending on the terminology you want to use. And we essentially work with tour operators based in the States, in Canada, a few other locations, sending their groups to Europe, and we book everything for them when they get here. But we do have very much a focus on, as I said, performing tours, educational groups, and cultural tours, which link to the school connection with the performing tours, but also adult tours as well. There shouldn't be a limit on the age at which you can go on a trip and learn things. So we also focus on very much literature, cultural, historical types of tours for those age groups as well. And that's what we do.
Thanks, Adele. It seems there's a growing demand for cultural, educational and special interest travel. So how can SME providers cater for this important segment, and do they need to move on from the old style school group approach of travel in the past?
Yeah, good question. I think it's important to note that, yes, things have changed during the time even I've been involved with this particular sector. And I think what groups are looking for now, particularly in the educational side, is very much the hands-on, the experiences. Our company motto is Dream, Plan, Enrich, and we focus very much on the enrichment part of that. It's to do with adding that extra element to a trip, which provides something they could never get in the classroom or at home or online or wherever else they're doing their learning. So it's about listening to the group that's traveling, to the group leader, the teacher, about what it is that they really want to achieve on the trip. What's their interest? What is the highlight for them? What is it they want their group members or the students to learn on that trip? And then working with your local contacts to actually go deeper and make that happen. And I think that's definitely something that's happened with museums we work with sites, particularly with historical centres. For instance, I'm thinking of examples of, we have a lot of interest because of the centenary of the World War I and also with World War II, that groups come, and now it's not just enough to go to see the D-Day beaches. They want to have experiences of being in the trenches, for instance, when they go to those World War I battle sites. So there's a lot more involvement, engagement in what they're actually doing on the trip, much more than there used to be. I think the other thing is that working in these niche sectors, it's very much about what is of interest to you as a company or as a person, because you're going to be spending a lot of time researching, learning, becoming an expert in that area. And if it's not something you truly feel passionate about, then it's much more difficult. I mentioned my background with music. It made it much easier for me to sell performing tours and organise them, because I have been on youth orchestra trips when I was a teenager myself. So I know what it's like from that background. Others in the educational sector focus on maybe sports trips, for instance, which is something we don't do because none of us are particularly sporty. So it's something to bear in mind, that focusing on a niche is a good thing, as long as it's something that you yourself have that knowledge and expertise in, because that's what people are buying from you ultimately. It's not about the cheapest hotels or the quickest route around a certain country. It's about that depth, that engagement and enrichment of the experience with the group.
Adele, can you give us some examples of the changes your business has made to products in recent years?
Yeah, I think bearing in mind what I just said about the engagement side of things and the levels that groups are now looking to go to with that. A few years ago, we set up our own music festival. There are hundreds of music festivals all over Europe for different types of groups, choirs, orchestras, wind bands. And we found that a lot of our groups didn't want to go down the route of very competitive festivals, but they actually wanted to have contact with groups from around the world as well, not just lots of American groups in Europe or very restricted range of types of groups. So we established our own music festival in London, but it's very different from others in that it brings in all different musical genres. It's a mix of marching bands and choirs and Chinese musical groups and Indonesian dance groups, all kinds of different types of music. And so we wanted to give our groups not just that performing experience, but a chance to meet other young people from all over the world that are performing in maybe different ways to the way that they are. And that's very much driven by what our clients have asked for in terms of this connection with other people, which is important. And secondly, I think, especially because we're dealing with young people in most of our groups, but generally, I think this applies to everybody as well in travel, is the safety and security issue. Whilst it's always, of course, been important, it's something that in the last couple of years particularly, has become the number one priority, of course, for groups traveling, but also it has to be much more transparent. So we are finding that whilst we've always had insurance and all the rest of it, the documents, the crisis management procedures and so on, increasingly we are now being asked to share those with our clients because they need to share them with the school teachers, with the school boards and so on. So it's become another step and a very good positive step, but something that we were never asked for before. And now we regularly need to provide this kind of information to our clients.
So Adele, a final very important question. What sort of turnaround do you need from your partners in Europe in order to meet customer expectations when you're quoting for new products or one-off specials?
Yeah, this is an important question. We often get sent information about, oh, this year we're running this exhibition or there's this anniversary taking place. And for us, because, as I mentioned right at the beginning, the boy that I spoke about had spent 2 years washing cars to earn the money. That's the kind of lead-in that we're working with our groups. They are young people for the most part. They need time to plan. The teachers need time to prepare the group for what they're going to be looking at. The parents especially need time to save up and pay in installments for the trip. So we are already working on 2020 groups now, 2 years in advance. And I think although things don't get booked up until the air becomes available, so about 11 months prior to travel, by that point the itinerary is set. So we need at least 18 months notice of something if we are to include it in our itineraries that we're working on. And a big part of what we do is helping our clients design their itineraries based on our knowledge of what's happening in Europe. And so the more information, even if it's vague, it's early in the planning stages, the more information we can have, the better. Ultimately, we need images. Ultimately, ideally, we need to be able to go and see what it is as well, or at least talk to the people that are organising whatever it is, an event or an anniversary event or an exhibition. so that we can then start to educate our clients that this is something that's coming up. It's too late. If it's less than a year, it's too late for us to be able to sell that to our clients, which is a shame.
Thanks, Adele. That was great. I really appreciate you joining us, and some very valuable information there. Thank you.